It's been almost 15 years since Sony released their last handheld gaming device, the PS Vita, and I think it's safe to say that it is about time they released a new one, especially given the popularity of the Nintendo Switch and all the other handhelds on the market, like the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, and all the rest. And while the PS Portal that was launched 2 years ago is still technically a handheld console, it cannot run games locally, it's just a remote player. So for people like me who travel a lot and, we want a dedicated handheld for playing games locally and offline, there's currently no such option from Sony. But I do have some good news. There have been a lot of leaks lately on Sony's upcoming handheld, codenamed Project Canis. So what do we know about it? Well, let me just start with the performance leaks first. According to Moore's Law is Dead, who's been extremely reliable in the past with his Switch 2 leaks and PS5 Pro leaks, the new PlayStation handheld may use AMD's Zen 6 architecture on TSMC's 3nm process, just like its bigger brother, the PS6. Because yes, this handheld is once again rumored to be a companion device to the PlayStation 6. More on that in just a bit. It's expected to have 6 CPU cores, out of which 4 are high-performance cores for gaming, and then the other 2 are low-performance cores for the OS only. This would be a similar setup to the PS6, just a bit cut down and optimized for efficiency, as the console is expected to only sip around 15 watts of power under load. The GPU, on the other hand, may have 16 compute units based on the new RDNA 5 architecture, which would deliver around 40 to 50% more performance compared to RDNA 3.5 that's currently used in the LIX. This 40 to 50% uplift is at the same clock speeds as RDNA 3.5, so 1.2 GHz in handheld mode and around 1.65 in docked mode, because yes, it is expected to have similar functionality to the Nintendo Switch, where you can simply dock the console and then use it as a regular home console, but more on this later. And finally, we have the memory, and here, the memory controller is expected to run on a 192-bit bus, using LPDDR5X memory at 8,533 MHz, which is crazy fast. And it could support up to 48 GB of RAM, although Moore's Law is Dead realistically believes that the amount should be anywhere between 24 to 32 GB. So what does this translate into? Well, traditional rasterization performance is expected to be around 55% to 75% of that of the PS5 while in docked mode. That's really impressive. However, the ray tracing performance would actually be much faster than the base PS5s, apparently anywhere between 1.3 times to 2.6 times faster. And keep in mind that this device is said to use about 15 watts of power, unlike over 200 watts like the PS5, so this is super impressive. Moore's Law is Dead also believes that the handheld will be around 50 to 60% faster compared to the ROG LIX. And finally, it could also get all of the improvements discussed by Mark Cerny and also Jack, the senior vice president of AMD. They talked about Project Amethyst and how AI could be used to enhance game visuals and performance on the next generation of consoles, including on this PS6 handheld. They talked about 3 new technologies co-developed by AMD and Sony, the first one being neural arrays, which actually connects the GPU compute units for more performance, hence maximizing efficiency. The second one is Radiance cores. These are built onto the chip, handling ray tracing features, which frees up the CPU and apparently offers significant speed boosts, also streamlining the data processing pipeline. And then we've got universal compression, which is an ambitious new tech that apparently analyzes all the data and then compresses it in a much more efficient way than the PS5's DCC. Now, Mark Cerny did say that these features are not finished just yet, and they can currently only be tested via experimental simulations. But still, it's pretty safe to say that the PS6 Portable should be a very capable machine, surpassing the base PS5 in many ways, like power consumption and ray tracing performance, to just name a few. But that's not everything, because the most exciting thing for me about this upcoming PlayStation handheld is the ability to apparently dock the console and use it on the big screen. Honestly, I didn't see this coming, but once I read that it may offer this functionality, I got very excited. As previously mentioned, the performance could be around 30% or so faster when docked. And that makes sense, as there wouldn't be any power constraints, so the clock speeds would be able to go from 1.2 to 1.6 GHz. What's even cooler is that Sony may also release a PlayStation 6S console, which would technically be this PS6 handheld hardware, but without a screen. This would technically be a permanently docked PS6 handheld for around $100 less. So if you don't care about portability and you only plan on using your console at home, then this could be a great alternative. It would be very similar to what Xbox have been doing with their One S and Series S of consoles, offering cheaper alternatives to their flagship console. Speaking of $100 cheaper, how much could this new handheld console actually cost? Well, here's everything we know about its price. But before that, let's talk about your data, not just on your PlayStation console, but in general, and how you can use Incogni to protect it. Imagine this jigsaw is your personal information. When you access websites or agree to share certain cookies, a piece of that data can be taken and sold by data brokers such as HackerRank here. The problem comes when this data is used for scams, like in this email here. Incogni helps prevent this by performing automated data removals on your behalf. And with their unlimited plan, you can even use custom removals if there's any websites you specifically need to crack down on. Exceptions on screen right here. Reduce your digital footprint by checking out Incogni, using the link below at incogni.com/ZONEofTECH to get an exclusive discount on their annual plan. Okay, and now back to the price. Moore's Law is Dead estimates a price of around $399 to $499, and then $299 to $399 for the PS6's home console, which in my opinion is really good. The current PS Portal costs $200, while technically only being a screen and the battery slapped onto a DualSense controller, without the ability to play games locally. Now, don't get me wrong, the PlayStation Portal is actually really good value for money, especially after the recent gigantic update that allows you to stream games directly from the cloud onto the PlayStation Portal, without a need for you to even have a PS5 in the first place. However, I much prefer playing my games locally, so in that case, a PS6 handheld for $399 would be insane value for money. Even at $499, it would still be fair when you consider that the ROG Xbox LIX costs $1,000. And not only will this PS6 handheld be more powerful, but it's also rumored to have the ability to seamlessly dock. But okay, all of these leaks definitely do make it sound way too good to be true, so what gives? Well, probably the display, which is expected to have a resolution of 1080p and a refresh rate of either 60 or 120 Hz, although 60 Hz would likely be the case here. No other specs for this display have leaked yet, so I wouldn't be surprised if we actually end up seeing the same panel as on the PlayStation Portal. This wasn't a bad display per se, the colors were pretty accurate, and the display itself was pretty responsive too, unlike the Switch 2's display, and it was also decently sized at 8 inches. However, I much prefer having an OLED. Even the Switch OLED, despite being way smaller and much dimmer, is, to my eyes, a nicer display to use. Also, I do hope they give us some customizable home screens because our wallpapers would look just stunning here. At least you can now get them for free on your phone, tablet, and desktop until the PS6 handheld releases. Link down below. However, with all of that power, the battery life should be pretty poor, right? Well, I don't know, we haven't really had any leaks or rumors on the battery itself, but with a power draw of around 15 watts, I'm expecting anywhere between 2 to 4 hours, of course with a decently sized battery too. Sony may also include multiple power profiles, just like a lot of the handhelds on the market right now, so if you want more performance, you can sacrifice battery life and vice versa. Additionally, they have recently introduced a power saver mode in the PS5, which lowers the clock speeds and the memory bandwidth as long as the developers implement that into their games. Of course, this makes zero sense on a docked console, but on a handheld that runs on battery power, it would make all the sense in the world. So there is actually a lot of speculation online that this mode has in fact been developed with a PS6 portable in mind, and that Sony introduced it early just to test the waters and to get feedback from developers before the PS6 portable comes out. So what about its design? Although we don't really have any design leaks, I would love for it to be similar to the PS Portal, even if it ends up being quite a bit thicker to accommodate that extra cooling and the battery and the chip and all that power, as the PlayStation Portal did look quite sleek, especially in black. And of course, I'm also expecting it to keep the same great adaptive triggers, haptic feedback, and possibly dual microphones and dual speakers. Now, yes, I know the speakers on the PlayStation Portal were not great, even though they were dual speakers. So I would love to see Sony make some improvements here when it comes to the sound, especially given the almost certain much thicker body. Additionally, I also expect this handheld to have some upgradability aspects, just like the bigger PS5. Possibly even the ability to replace the M.2 SSD with a larger one, or even have a secondary slot for it. And I also expect to see backwards compatibility with PS5 and PS4 titles. So, having said all of this, when should we expect to see the new PlayStation Portable? Well, if the rumors are true, Moore's Law is Dead was saying that a manufacturing would begin in mid-2027 with an expected release in late 2027, possibly in the fall, but definitely before the holidays. 2027 is also when we expect to see the PlayStation 6, so this new handheld would then launch alongside it as part of the PS6 family. Personally, I'm genuinely excited for this new handheld, and if you are too, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe because we'll be covering every new leak and rumor as soon as they drop. As always, I'm Daniel, this is ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.